everyone, and welcome to the Intralingo World Lit Podcast, where we explore and open up to different ways of seeing and being in the world through books. I'm Lisa Carter, founder and creative director of Intralingo. And today my guest is Margaret Davis Ghielmetti, who is the author of Bravish, a memoir of a recovering perfectionist. So welcome, Margaret.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. It really means a lot to me.
Oh, I'm so happy. And last night you had the big book launch. Your book just came out. How was the launch?
Fantastic. I was really grateful that Women and Children First, which is Chicago's feminist bookstore, agreed to do the launch. And it was fantastic. My conversation partner is the co-owner, whom I know from our book group. I belong to Women Aging with Grace and Wisdom. Not sure about the wisdom part, but we try. And fantastic books, fantastic conversation. So I'm very happy to have the book launch. That's part of the author's dream.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the first time that I'd heard of the bookstore. You are from Chicago, so it makes sense that you launched the book there, even though you're currently in Switzerland.
Right. My husband's from Switzerland, and we decided to come over to spend some time in the peaceful outdoorsiness of Switzerland and to spend time with his 92-year-old dad and family, and have stayed on and just enjoying it very much.
That's good. That's great. Well, it looks like an amazing bookstore, and I'll definitely be adding a link to it as well and checking it out further. It's got a really great mission.
I completely agree. They're very active in protecting parts of our community that need protection and promoting all people. So I'm a big fan. It's a great bookstore.
Yeah. Well, thanks for introducing me to it. It's good to know. I wanted to start by saying, Margaret, we've said this briefly on social media. It's the first time that we're meeting, but I actually feel that you are a true kindred spirit. There's been an incredible connection in reading your memoir. And for so many reasons, which we will get into. But first, I just wanted to ask you, what is that like for you as an author, as a memoirist, to really bare yourself, to open yourself up like that and have people connect in such a deep way when they don't even know you?
Well, honestly, Lisa, that is why I do art. My goal is always to connect with other humans. In terms of opening myself up in such a candid way, I learned really to do that, first of all, through our 20 years living mostly outside the United States. Because what I didn't know when we started to live overseas was the piece of the puzzle I was missing. I was very open-minded and well-traveled and multilingual, et cetera, et cetera. What I wasn't skilled at was asking for help and accepting help. And that really needs a certain vulnerability that I didn't know how to have. So I developed that over the course of the book, and subsequently in my creative expression in the past 10 years or so, when I do live lit storytelling or when I've done my solo show, it's so cheering to me when someone approaches me after I tell a story to say, thank you for talking about infertility. My sister went through that and I had no idea. Or thank you for talking to me about the death of your parents. I'm going through that too. So to make connection with people that's the reason I do any art that I do. That's my why. You and I were talking about the why that you have, and my why is to make connection, see if I can help people know that they're not alone, see if I can inspire people to live their own life, and also to entertain. I do love to entertain people with particularly my travel misadventures. So I tried to balance the really vulnerable aspects of my life, which I think some people really can relate to, with the, foibles of any human being walking this planet.
Yeah, that's a really great description of your book too. It is part travelogue, travel adventure stories. It's all about cultural adaptation or misadaptation.
Right.
It's about, you know, and I'm going to jump right to the end of the book here, and we will come back to the beginning, but, you know, what you say in the end, and you know, it really just basically, you said you said what I do. You said that in discovering the world, you discovered yourself.
Mm.
And there is something about travel, about seeing different places and different people that reflects our own experience or contrasts it in such a way that we can see ourselves more clearly.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
completely agree. I feel that, as you know from the book, I've never been someone who felt completely grounded where I grew up. As much as I love my hometown, my mom always said I had one foot at home and one foot out in the world. That's the way I'm built, and the world fascinates me every day. I love the world. And as you know, I started to write the book in reaction to a certain presidential election a few years ago where I felt that we were being told that the other is bad. And the other is not bad in my experience. The world is not my enemy. And that's a large part of what I wanted to share with people initially, is the beauty of what you said, what I've learned that I would never have learned if I stayed at home. There's so many lessons and joys I learned in between the challenges, absolutely the challenges. But I agree with you. I think you and I are trying to do the same thing, to share the abundance of the larger world. I don't have a lot of interest in staying just in my county or within my state lines. It's just not me. It's for other people. I completely understand, but it's an amazing world, and I love sharing it with people.
Yeah, that's so perceptive as well, you know, that it feels like definitely, you know, this is a wave that started maybe, you know, with the last presidential election and is sort of amplifying as this one is underway. You know, this notion of being insular and protective and sort of tribal, and it is something I think that needs combating. It's not just in the US, it's many places in the world. But we are so much poorer if we are not looking to others.
I completely agree. Absolutely agree. It's one of the biggest richnesses. Is that a word? No, I'm a writer. I should know that's not a word. Whatever the word is that approximates that, it's one of the richest parts of my life, is being able to really learn from and enjoy and benefit from and share the richness of the world.
Yeah, for sure. So that is where your memoir begins. It does begin sort of with, you know, as I say, it's more of a travelogue at the beginning. Here you are, you're in Chicago. Your husband, Patrick, is in the hotel industry, and off you head to Paris and to Cairo, and from there to Sharm el-Sheikh and Chiang Mai and Bangkok and Singapore, and there are all these incredible places. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about how you traveled before, of course, but this was really when you set off to live abroad?
Mm-hmm. I had lived abroad briefly. I finished college in a hurry because I couldn't wait to start traveling, and spent most of the year being an au pair and a Eurail Pass person. So I had already that experience, but that's of course very different from actually trying to create a new life in a new setting. So I was quite unprepared for that. Honestly, if I could have at the time when I was, so in 2000, could have continued traveling a lot with Patrick, I would have been quite happy, but he has always loved being an expatriate. Left Switzerland quite young, loves Switzerland, but needed to see the world and wants to be inside a culture as much as he can. And this opportunity arose for him. I mean, a global hotel company like Four Seasons, I know we loved our professional life with Four Seasons. It was inevitable that we were going to move around the world. And I said yes to that, not unwillingly, but it's probably not what I would have chosen. Looking back, I'm very glad we did it, but I was unprepared for how challenging it was and how different it is to try to create a life as opposed to visit someplace and then leave again.
Mm-hmm.
As I've already said, the biggest challenge was that I didn't know then to really ask for help.
Yeah.
Advice to my younger self. And I really didn't have an idea how to express my emotions. So when I didn't even know when I was feeling lonely and sad and angry and bewildered, that I could share that with people. People would understand, or they wouldn't, but they would support me. So even my closest friends in reading the book now are saying, I'm so sorry. If I'd known, I would have been there for you. And I say, I know that now.
Yes.
I just didn't feel it was appropriate, thanks to the Family Handbook, for me to burden people with my genuine emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to really learn that. I think that was the biggest difference between being a traveler and setting up a life in another place. Is it's different. It's different for anyone who moves, and then it's different in a different culture with different roles and rules there. And I wasn't prepared for the reality of it. And I thought I was. So that, of course, compounds it.
Yeah, I totally can relate to that. I've lived in different places as well. I left, fairly young. And you write these lovely letters home about all of the exciting and amazing things that you're doing. And that's what everyone thinks life is like. And you tend not to write when you are depressed and lonely and have messed up in ways you don't understand because it's cultural or all these other things. And it's very hard to express the negative. And you bring this up as well, because everyone says, oh, you live this incredible life. And to a certain extent, they are living some of their dreams through you. And it's hard to share the reality.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that. And even that was actually true for a lot of people who wanted to put that on me. Those are the people I really felt were trying to tell me, oh, you're so lucky, and don't tell us anything negative. We won't believe it. My genuine friends, I know, would have really welcomed my feelings with open arms. I just didn't know that was appropriate. I also think I felt a huge pressure myself never to criticize another place or another people, because I didn't ever want someone to misunderstand. I didn't want to be disloyal to the host country. I didn't want someone to have a reason to dislike the place I was living or the people. I didn't have the wisdom at all to separate out, wait, I'm just having my emotional experience as a human. I'm not criticizing this other place. That I had to learn over time, that it's okay to tell people things aren't going well. It doesn't mean that you're slamming a particular culture or place. That took me a long time to understand.
Yeah, and that can get very confusing too, because again, it seems like that generalization, and yet, the world is a wonderful place, but that doesn't mean that everyone in the world is wonderful. And, we can have negative experiences
Right,
with
exactly.
individuals.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as you say, a big part of this book is the handbook, the family handbook. In this case, it was the Davis Family Handbook. These unwritten rules, these ways that we are supposed to be that are familial or cultural. It's not a written rule book, but we take on these rules, and I think every family has them, and we don't recognize that so much of our behavior is conditioned.
Completely agree. And I have to say that was one of the greatest gifts as a writer, because I knew once it occurred to me that I was writing a memoir and not another solo show of traveler's tales. It's like, oh my gosh, look, I'm writing a memoir. I didn't even know that myself. It told me. And I knew where I was starting when we leave the United States, and I knew where I was ending, which was the current day, essentially. but I didn't know what was going to hold this together. And then in one of these wonderful divine inspiration, middle of the night, hope you have a pad of paper next to the bed, I realized, oh, a handbook. As you say, everyone gets one. It's not written down. Everyone's is different. In its best sense, they're a wonderful compass, a wonderful, or at least for my family, a wonderful moral compass. But in extreme, like any good quality, can be quite debilitating. I needed to see that those were, as you said, the rules I was living by, become conscious of them. And then my goal has been to take the best parts of them and to release the rest. What I found very cheering with readers of the book is people saying just what you said, oh, we got one too. And also realizing that in my case, I really knew it wasn't that my parents had written it in order to torture me. They also inherited a handbook and were doing the best they could with what they had, that old adage. And so I wanted to be really aware of how it had impacted me and was impacting me as I traveled around the world, and see how I could revise it. And it's been very exciting to talk to readers to see what was in your family handbook. And I've heard people say, one word, work, or another word, silence, which I almost start crying just thinking about that. It's that they are, as you said, so powerful. They're not just rules, they feel like commandments. So thank you for pointing that out. That realization is what allowed me to write the book, because I wanted to show the narrator's journey from realizing she had a handbook to, oh gosh, I want to revise the handbook.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. There's so much there I want to say. Pick up on, 100%. It is our parents received their own handbook, and their parents received their own handbook, and it is 100%. I believe about becoming aware, that self-reflection, realizing why we're behaving the way we're behaving, and then making a conscious choice. Do I want to continue to do that, or would I like to shift my behavior?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not easy.
No.
Not easy.
Not easy.
Yeah. It's so funny. I wrote out my own handbook after reading the book.
Okay.
Just a few things, because many of them are the same as yours. Don't air your dirty laundry, which comes in many forms. That's, as you say, about keeping silent, don't express emotion, and that work piece. I think that's maybe of a certain generation as well. But
Yes.
it's universal, a lot of them, a lot of the handbook rules.
I think that's true, because I do think they come from, it's kind of like the 10 Commandments, no matter what someone's faith background is. These are overall good rules to have. I mean, I think the handbook is overall a good idea.
Yes.
Someone did ask yesterday on the book launch the question, what handbook would I do now? And it occurred to me, I revised it, as I say, at the end of this book, but also started to write a different handbook, which is a lot gentler. First of all, as I say, ask for help, accept help, have more fun, less work. I drive myself hard all the time. My mom, while she did give me the handbook, was always saying to me, get into the right lane, let people smell the roses, essentially.
Yes.
So someone said to me, I'm going to give you the title of gent-ish. And I think that's a good goal to go for me, because I do, as you say, it's pervasive. I still tend to slide into some of those rules because I know there will be an immediate emotional payoff. If I do the old stories, that old payoff is it's like a jolt of, oh, I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think it comes as well. Everything is a process. It's a process to take these on. It's a process to let them go. Becoming who we are is a process.
Thank God, right?
Yes.
Better late than never. I keep telling myself.
Totally. 100%. Yeah, it's so true. I think, the other thing that I was thinking about in the book as well is that, when you left Chicago, you had been working as well. As you move overseas, you take on these new roles, as you call them, of trailing spouse and minister of domestic affairs, which it can be hard not to work. It can be hard to change our identity, whether we move jobs or professions or the way we see ourselves. And often I think we grab onto ways to have purpose.
Exactly. Thank you. That's perfectly said. Because a lot of people are, oh, you're so lucky you don't have to work right now. And I said, I really recognize a life of privilege that I have led. I really do recognize that and appreciate it. But to be suddenly without a business card, without a professional identity, nature abhors a vacuum. So you're right. I filled that hole immediately with these perfect this and perfect that, so that I would feel a sense of purpose. I would get the feedback that I was missing, external feedback at that point. That's still, I think, a danger for me. As you say, it's always a work in progress, but to be careful to look at what I've learned, which is to try to ask myself, what do I genuinely want? And I wish that for anyone. I don't have any investment in what for someone else is a fulfilling life, but to be honest with ourselves. What do I want, and what can I try to do about it within the circumstances I'm in, as opposed to automatically plugging that hole inside me with something that will plug the hole, but it doesn't fill the void.
Mm-hmm. And asking ourselves what we want is also a really difficult question, because we, we don't often take time to do that or to discover what it is we really want, because, we are working or having a family or whatever it is that we're doing, a combination of all of the above. And it can be startling to then have that time and be made to ask that question.
That's a great word, startling, because I used bewildered a lot, but startling is I wish I had talked to you before I finished the book, because that's exactly what it was. I was startled. I wasn't anticipating that at all. And again, I really recognize what a luxury it is. There's never a day that I didn't recognize that, but I was startled by, I don't even know who I am. I didn't have a sense of who I was at that point. So the what do I want piece really has to do with, to quote Mary Oliver, what will we do with this one wild, precious life? And that's really part of what I'm hoping to inspire in other people, is to give some thought to what are dreams that I have deferred? What are the emotional payoffs that I've been fulfilling that give me the very legitimate excuse to defer this dream? And am I ready to set those aside in order to fulfill a dream or to live the life that I want to live? That's definitely my hope with this book, that maybe people will give some thought to, oh, okay, I see that. Maybe I can be brave enough to try to do things differently for a greater expression of selfhood.
Yeah. And I love that as well, just the title of the book, Bravish,
Thank you.
because we sometimes think we have to be all in, or I keep saying we, and really, that I'm only talking about myself,
I know.
right? Coaching it so much easier. But, I think I have to be full on brave and full on, as you say, culturally accepting and full on open, or whatever it is. And adding this ish just, makes it that a little bit gentler on ourselves.
I'm glad that you see it that way. That's definitely how that came about, was realizing, wait, I learned to not be 100% brave.
Mm-hmm.
So to be bravish does feel like enough. That's all I expect of anyone else. So I've come to expect that of myself as a flawed human being. I get to be
Mm-hmm.
another human being as opposed to somehow thinking I'm well, you read about me with the superwoman cape and the
Yes.
crown and no, I don't want any of that.
Yeah. And yet you are incredibly brave. I want to talk a little bit about your journey to storytelling as well. When you left and, one of the things you were most excited about was time to write. You were going to write your book. You were intending to, and easy as anything to set that aside, and it got sublimated. But at some point, then you and Patrick decided to take improv,
Mm-hmm.
and that
That
led to
was one of the
Live
most
Lit.
fun, absolutely. That was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. When people read about my dad, you'll see that he's really had the spirit of improv. He was always ready to riff. And I take that from him. So that was, and I love to be in community. I love to be, as we've said, in connection. I love to be on a team. And improv is all about yes and. Someone says a giraffe just walked in. Yes, and I love giraffes. So I love that whole spirit, and it was fun. With my new handbook, fun being a part of it, that really was a nice break. And it was a nice break at a time when my parents' health was really declining. I needed something that was not just sadness, and we
Mm-hmm.
both really enjoyed it. And as you say, what happened with the storytelling is I thought I'd do more improv. They didn't have anything available. I, on a whim, signed up for storytelling. It was absolutely love at first sight. And it really gave me the opportunity to share, particularly initially, my travel stories with an audience that would say, gosh, you don't look like the kind of person who would go up into a tower filled with rabid monkeys, but I guess you are. Or gosh, you don't look like the person who would ride her bicycle into a canal in Bangkok, but evidently you are. And it was really fun for me, but it was also an effort to combat the handbook that says, also don't stand in the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
That's too much. You can be a supporting role or I don't want to say a bit player, but to stand in the spotlight was really a challenge for me in my personal growth. But as I shared earlier, what I loved was people's response when I started to get even more honest and vulnerable in my storytelling, how responsive people were. I think we're all hungry for stories because they do connect us. And I love that. I love
Mm.
that.
That is so incredible, and it is one thing to tell stories, and I think it's an entirely different skill, but also reaction to, as you say, stand on stage. In your case, the moth stage, often, competing. Live Lit. It is such an incredible event and connection to be right there with listeners.
Mm.
Very unlike a book that goes out and you don't always know what the reaction is.
That's very true. That's a great observation. It also really helped me to start to let go of imposter syndrome, the feeling that
Mm.
I wasn't a creative person, that I still at the beginning kept saying, oh, I'm still the minister of domestic affairs, or I'm used to things I used to do, so still taking my identity elsewhere. And I started to practice saying to people in line, we'd be waiting to get into the moth to buy tickets, and what do you do? I'm a storyteller.
Mm.
And I would practice saying that and standing in that. And that grew, and that allowed me to grow into, now when people ask me, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a creative person, I feel I can say that now, but I needed to flex those muscles. So definitely storytelling helped me on a lot of levels. it also really helped me in writing because, as you know, as someone who really loves books, to read anything out loud is very different than to write it. So I was trying to bring the live lit feeling to the book as much as I could, to bring the book alive and keep it in present tense and keep it storytelling in that way. And I also did that with the solo show as much as I could. Of course, there are some flashbacks, but I wanted the, as you say, the immediacy of having the audience with me. I wanted the audience, and I still do, with me on the journey. I wanted the audience to be worried about the narrator. Is she ever going to write that doggone book? You know, she's carrying that freaking journal. Is she ever going to write the book? I wanted people to be worried. And a lot of people have told me, yeah, that narrator, come on, write the book. I'm like, I know.
Yes.
So I like the immediacy of it, as you say, connecting.
Yeah. And it, you know, I've talked to a number of authors since the whole COVID pandemic began, and it is the thing that everyone is missing the most because they cannot be in a room with readers when they are launching their book. And it's so difficult, and yet thank goodness for Zoom and other technologies that allow you to still, you know, speak to readers.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And since my life has been international, quite honestly, having the book launch on Crowdcast allowed people to attend from all around the world, which they wouldn't have done. So in that regard, as much as I missed the molecular excitement of being with humans, it did allow me to connect with a lot more people in other areas. So
Yes.
we miss being with our people, though.
Yeah, that is definitely a blessing, as you say, because, you know, exactly, as someone who, you know, has people in many places, friends and family, it's hard to get together in real life.
It is.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. You know, I think, as I said, one of the things that I love so much about your book is this never-ending process of getting to know yourself. And as you go along, and even though you recognize that you have the handbook and you change certain things by choice to be who you want to be, this process of living your own life, it took time. It is taking time.
Yes.
It will take time.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I think one thing that has helped me with that is when I realized, oh, as I say, I thought I was writing another solo show. It appears that I'm writing a memoir. And I really was panicky because I thought I'm too old to do this. And I realized, wait, on the contrary, by virtue of having gotten the silver hair and living to this age, my life has been writing the book. It's just up to me now to write it down. But it is absolutely a process. I don't ever hope to get to the point where I'm stagnant in terms of personal growth. I still have so much to learn from other cultures, from personal growth, from other humans, from beautiful books. I love that. I love to learn new things. I don't think we're ever done.
I hope not.
I hope not too.
Yeah, but it's such a tricky thing, or I have found it to be, that I always think that when I get here, I'll figure it out. Right. Once I understand this about myself, or, you know, I'm in my 50s, and I always say to my partner, shouldn't I know myself by now? Like, how long does this take?
And what's the response that you get?
He just shakes his head quietly. Yeah.
A wise person.
He is. He's very wise. He's incredibly introspective, and I do believe that it's, you know, it's thanks to him that I've gone on, you know, my own personal journey as well, because it certainly was in my handbook that you just forge ahead. You know, this whole introspection, looking at yourself. I mean, who has time for that? That that brings up emotion, and we don't have emotion either. And again, that's not to lay any blame. My parents were also born in the 20s, and it's a very different thing.
Yes, completely agree.
Yeah.
I also really credit my husband for taking me on the personal growth journey. I can credit myself for us getting into couples therapy when we were dealing with the infertility, because we hadn't done that before, and given the handbook around that too, at least for my parents' generation, one did not do that.
Yes.
But we did, and I believe it saved our marriage. So that was encouraging. And then Patrick got very engaged in personal growth work, and I'm forever indebted to him for being on the journey with me. It's not easy. I don't think anyone who's in any kind of relationship would say it's easy. If there aren't any dings on your relationship after more than 6 months, I've got to wonder what's going on. So I'm very grateful to him, as it sounds like you are. It's great to have a partner on the road.
It is. And, I really loved your honesty in that regard as well. That, we love Patrick. Patrick is, we don't know Patrick, but we also, as much as we love you, we love Patrick.
I'll tell him that.
Yes. And, and it is because you are both so honest and understanding of one another on this journey when, travel, let alone living abroad as expats, can either bring people together or can truly tear you apart, because it's an added layer of stress on a relationship.
I completely agree. Yeah. And that's something we've had to learn as ongoing, as more advice to my younger self. Be a lot more honest in my conversations with my partners. That took me a long time. That's still a struggle for me. I'm very conflict avoidance. I would rather single-handedly make everything better as opposed to saying that I have a problem. But Patrick holds my feet to the fire on that one. He's definitely someone who's willing to go in and work on it. And it really does make a difference. So you're right. Again, if I could go back in time, I don't want to give back my life, but I would have been a lot more straightforward in my conversations. And I believe Patrick would have been too. But it does take someone who's willing to meet, I think, if not in the middle, come towards the middle, and then meet wherever we can. I do believe that's what it's all about.
I agree. Yeah. And I think that leads me also to think about, towards later in the book, you talk about this difference that you are discovering between compassion and benevolence. And
that woman saved my life.
Wow. Would you tell us how you see this difference and that experience of learning about compassion and benevolence?
For people who haven't read the book yet, it really came up when my dad was nearing the end of his life. And after a lifetime of being a very gentle, very kind, smart, silly, wonderful person, was becoming really desperate and sad and scared, and very hard to be around sometimes, because I went out to see him, if not every day, every other day, which was my pleasure, but he was getting very, very demanding. When are you coming? Why aren't you staying? And it wasn't the dad I knew, it was the dad I had in his mid-90s. And I was trying to be compassionate towards that. And I really didn't understand why I was so exhausted, spending time with someone I loved so much. And so another wonderful therapist said to me, you don't need to worry about being compassionate. That's part of who you are. But when you go, Margaret, into compassion overdrive, I can no longer trust you, because it's no longer about the other person. You're trying to soothe yourself. And that really hit a bullseye, because I could see that I was trying to compassion my way through this, to fix it somehow through my extreme powers of compassion. And she said, what you need is benevolence, which comes from bene volere, to wish someone well. but not compassione, to be in their, really their distress. And I started to practice that with my dad, which was very, very hard because I really wanted him to know how beloved he was. But I had to admit he knew that from me. And so I started to wish him well. And at the end of a visit, walk out the door to my own life. That was very, very hard to do. But I also now still exercise that muscle when I can feel myself going to the old story of, oh, if I'm just more compassionate, I can fix this. I can make this better. I can control this. No, I can't. I mean, my control really ends, here's my arms. That's the circle of control I'm in charge of. So I really benefited from trying to use benevolence in all of my relationships, actually. So Patrick knows that if he's having one of his moments, he's a much more dramatic person than I am. He would be happy with me saying that. He knows it to be true. Mm-hmm. I will just think benevolence, allow him, wish him well, let him have his experience. I don't need to be in that with him. I don't need to fix there's nothing to fix. So that was another one of the life-changing moments. So I'm grateful to yet another beautiful guide on the way.
That is a piece that really hit very deeply for me as well. This notion, what I do in my work, and it is because it is who I am, is I do believe that we can all develop our compassion, our sense of compassion, through reading, through seeing the lives of others, through understanding ourselves. And yet there is this double-edged sword to compassion, which I have found myself on many times in terms of, as you say, trying to save or going beyond and sacrificing oneself in the name of compassion. My mother had Alzheimer's, and that's, when you were reflecting on how it was to be with your father when his personality had changed late in life, and, in Alzheimer's, a personality changes completely, and to not take that on, and it's such a process, and I didn't have another word. And now I do. And benevolence is really, it's a powerful one.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry about your mom, because it must be unbearable sometimes to see someone's personality. You don't have the person that you had before. So the challenge, just try to stay present with the person, how they are, not how I wish them to be. It's hard. So I'm sorry for what you experienced.
Oh, thank you. It was a huge journey, as it is for all of us to watch our parents age, if we are lucky enough to have them into their elderly years. And being far away adds its own challenge as well. You were living overseas and traveling back and forth, and that puts, stresses on your marriage and your own individuality of trying to deal with this. Caring for and watching parents age and die is a very universal experience, I think, no matter what the situation.
I think so too. And I do consider it a privilege, but not easy. I mean, I really do think a big love means a big loss and a lot of pain. I think that was another part of our travels that was so impactful to me, was to go to India. And as I described, being in Varanasi, and we weren't there very long, but to really feel that people were taking their loved ones all the way home. I thought, that's what I want to do. It's not going to be easy, but I didn't want to turn away. I didn't want to plastic wrap anything. I wanted to do that. So in terms of, again, another culture that profoundly changed my life, that experience quickly changed me from scurrying to try to make things better to not try to make things better, but to be really present and be a part of taking my mom all the way home.
Mm-hmm. That is, yes, the profound experiences we can find in seeing the way other cultures deal with certain things. And as you say, it's almost instantaneous when we can connect
Exactly.
with it. Our eyes are immediately opened and we can see very differently than we've ever seen before.
Thank you for saying that, because honestly, in writing the book, there were several times when I was concerned that it would feel too instantaneous, that readers would not believe that my eyes could be opened in that way, that in a moment. And I had several times where my eyes were opened in a different way in one instance, by, as you say, the way another culture experiences and addresses and lives life. So I'm very grateful that you said that, because I did worry that people would say, really? You see one day in Varanasi and your life has changed? Yes.
Yes, yeah. I do believe it is the absolute incredible power of travel, of being elsewhere. And I do think we can find it in books. And I do think I did find it in your book as well. There's this experience of the universal being personal and the personal being universal. And it's like this infinity loop, and the other is us, and we are the other.
Thank you. Wow,
Uh,
that's humbling. Thank you for saying that.
No, it's my pleasure. It's how I feel. It's what I took from your book, and I truly so appreciate you writing it. I was one of the readers all along saying, write in the journal, and of course, I'm saying that to myself as well, all
Okay.
along the way, as many of us are. Do what we want to do and live our lives, and you give us the permission and the courage to begin doing that wherever we are on our journey.
Well, if I've contributed in any way to that, I am deeply, deeply grateful.
Yeah, no, we are grateful to you.
Thank you.
So thank you,
Okay.
Margaret, for this
Thank you.
wonderful book, Bravish. It really was impactful for me, as books are when we take the time to take them in. But it takes skill and courage, and as a reader, I appreciate that.
Well, I thank you in return. This was a fantastic conversation, and I do feel that we, as we agreed, are probably separated at birth.
Yes.
And I really hope that this is the beginning of a much, much longer and deeper conversation also with your fellow readers. As I say, I love what you're bringing to the world. I believe in your mission. I believe in your why. I think you're making the world a better place.
Oh,
And I really appreciate that. So thank you for that. And thank you for today.
thank you so much. And thank you, to everyone who is listening or watching. You will find Margaret's bio, website, links to her book in the show notes. I truly encourage you to rush out and buy it, ideally from your independent bookstore, but of course anywhere it's available. Ask your library as well. Truly, it's important to promote our libraries. They provide such an incredible service. And we would love it if you have any reflections on this conversation, on Margaret's book, to put them in a comment on YouTube, to reach out via my website, intralingo.com, or via Margaret's website and social media, because it truly is about connecting and sharing and exchanging views. So we do hope you will do that. Again, thanks, Margaret. And I'm certain that this won't be your last book. I hope it is not.
Thank you.
uh,
Not
and
today, but yes, I look
yes,
forward to the next book too.
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Launch this one and get it out into the world first. But good luck as well with your live lit storytelling. And what a pleasure that would be one day to listen to it in person.
I look forward to that. Thanks
Yeah.
again so much, Lisa. And thanks to Intralingo. I really appreciate today.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.